Welcome to the All Things Wildfire Podcast, where we delve into the latest trends and hot topics in protecting properties against wildfire. So sit back, relax, and join us as we arm you against disaster.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another episode of All Things Wildfire. Today, we have a guest that works with autonomous vehicles, I guess I would call it, a flying vehicle, a helicopter of all things. Max Brodie joins us from Rain. And Max, I'm going to just turn this over to you, my friend, and kind of let us know what this is and what you're doing with this helicopter that you've got going on.
Well, thank you very much, OP. It's wonderful to be here on the show. Certainly All Things Wildfire is one of the key publications in the podcast role and bringing the wildfire community together. So it's an honor to be here. Before we get super specific into what Rain is doing, I just like to take us up to 30,000 feet. And while I know everyone who's listening is very familiar with the impacts of catastrophic wildfire, I wanted to share a few stats that you may not have heard, which is that really underscores the scale of what we're up against. So I'll begin by just noting that the 2020 California wildfire season undid all greenhouse gas emissions progress in the state of California over the past 20 years. Every solar panel, every electric vehicle. Fast forward to 2021, and if we were to aggregate the emissions from global wildfires and consider it to be a country, that country would rank second in emissions only to China.
Holy smokes.
Yes. And if we fast forward again to 2023, the 2023 Canadian wildfires have emitted over 6 times the total emissions of the state of California. An absolutely staggering amount of emissions and particulate matter. And so, all that being said, we experience wildfire locally in our own communities. Certainly, we all know folks who have either been evacuated or have been evacuated ourselves. But the scale of this problem is truly global. It transcends borders. It transcends countries. And it's imperative that we bring the best technology that we have to address this emerging and growing global crisis. The United Nations estimates that extreme wildfires will rise 14% by the end of the decade, by 2030. So we've got a big job ahead of us, and there's such fantastic work already being done in fuels management and prescribed fire getting more good fire on the landscape. And Rain is supporting that work as well, which we'll chat about a bit later. But really, the core of what we do is powering the next evolution of initial attack. So if you think back to the 90s, initial attack meant getting to a fire somewhere between 1 and 6 hours. And then in the last decade, California set a new standard of getting to ignitions within 20 minutes. Now, in the next decade, we have the technology ingredients with early detection, autonomous aircraft, and advanced wildfire propagation simulations to be able to power the next generation of initial attack, which we call autonomous initial attack, which is able to get to ignitions as fast as necessary to slow or contain those ignitions before they grow out of control. So what we do at Rain, we build software that adapts existing autonomous aircraft with the intelligence to perceive, understand, and suppress wildfires, which ultimately unlocks pre-positioning numerous autonomous aircraft for high wildfire risk areas to before they grow to control. So
love that.
I'll turn it back to you, OP, but that's the gist.
No, this is great information for all of us to really understand some of the more of the impacts that we don't even think about with regards to the emissions and in the impacts of what that is going to do in the future, is still unknown, but it's there's a lot here with wildfire. It's not just the actual fire itself, it's everything else that comes along with it. And thank you for sharing those stats. I do want to let everyone know about the recent press release that came out in February 27th, where it says Rain and Sikorsky demonstrate early detection and rapid response to wildfire with an autonomous Blackhawk helicopter. The two companies have demonstrated how the autonomous Blackhawk helicopter with Rain's wildfire mission autonomy system can respond rapidly to suppress incipient wildfires. And Max, I think that's awesome. I think that's amazing. And so it looks like you've partnered up with this company, and you guys have been able to utilize not only your helicopter, but this technology now can be put into a Blackhawk, into other helicopters. Is that right?
That is correct. And I think this is a very important point that you've just brought up to understand about Rain and the broader autonomy ecosystem is that right now and in the future, there are numerous autonomous aircraft that are general purpose. They carry cargo, support logistics in military context. They, in the future, will carry people. And these autonomous aircraft platforms are, in some cases, very advanced, benefiting from decades of investment by the Department of Defense. And Rain's role in this ecosystem is adapting these autonomous aircraft with the intelligence to perceive, understand, and suppress wildfires, to make them useful in a wildfire context. And so that's exactly the setup through our collaboration with Sikorsky. You can go on YouTube and see videos of an autonomous Blackhawk flying around with no human pilots on board. High speed, low altitude terrain.
Wow.
It seems futuristic, but this is one of those instances where the future is really here. And so we adapt that platform with the intelligence to perceive the fire. So as the aircraft is approaching the ignition, it's using onboard thermal sensors to size out the fire and understand its behavior, and that information gets fed into another part of our software called the fire suppression engine, which figures out, okay, is the best use of the onboard payload to put a containment line ahead of the right advancing flank? Is it to put 60% of the payload to douse hotspots? Or how does the strategy change when the winds change? How does the strategy change when there's another aircraft that's coming 3 minutes or 5 minutes behind you? And so that's the layer of intelligence that we are adding to existing autonomous aircraft platforms. And of course, the military has had a bit of a head start over the past few decades in autonomy. But over the next decade, many, many new autonomous aircraft platforms will come online and be able to benefit from the software that we've developed to make autonomous aircraft smart for a wildfire operation.
I think that's amazing. What you described about, the sensors being able to adjust and make different decisions based on wind speed, based on proximity, based on the payload that they have, how many gallons of water or retardant they have on board. That's amazing. I love that. I love that. And it's really interesting because I would imagine that, not only will homeowners and residents and most of the population be in line with wanting to see you succeed and see this really in action, but firefighters also, right? To be able to understand that there is going to be less risk of life, but also some decision making that is going on that, quite honestly, when there's an event, you have the people on the ground making some significant decisions similar to what this autonomous aircraft is going to be doing. So I think that's super special. That's amazing. Now, let me ask you, Max, are you guys also involved with the XPRIZE?
So we're very, very grateful to the XPRIZE Foundation for creating awareness and support within the fire community for rapid wildfire containment technology. It will take a whole community working together to bring about this future where we have high intensity ignitions that are being contained or slowed before they grow out of control. But in addition to the XPRIZE Foundation, I'm very grateful to the guidance and leadership of many fire professionals and innovators in the community who are shepherding this technology towards deployment. and for the opportunity to bring that technology to deployment as soon as possible. So our focus is deploying the technology as soon as possible. And we're also very grateful to the XPRIZE Foundation for building awareness and creating support within the community.
That's great. When we interviewed Andrea Santi a few weeks ago, your company came up, and then it came up before too with some sensor company that we interviewed, and so I've been wanting to chat with you. So I love the collaboration that takes place, and having been in this industry myself since 2020, I begun to realize pretty quickly that collaboration is not always something that everyone wants to do. It felt like everyone was in different silos and they weren't sharing a lot of information. And I felt like that kept people from coming up with new ideas and being able to execute on how we could eliminate or minimize the impacts of wildfire. But let me ask you, Max, how have you? Well, you've already done it. You've been able to, and I see that online. You've got a lot of cooperation from firefighters and leadership in that arena to help want to move your purpose along. But do you have any challenges that you're facing now that is going to, you think, slow you down from getting out into making this a reality for us?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest challenges is just building awareness of this technology and building consensus that this model of early detection and rapid response is the future. I certainly appreciate that folks at fire agencies have had a lot of emergencies to deal with in recent history, and it can be very difficult to put time and space towards thinking about, okay, what's next?
Yes,
what's coming down the pipeline, and so certainly a challenge for us has been to have that dialogue, continuously, despite the very near-term requirements that are being placed on fire agencies and emergency response organizations to deal with, if it's not catastrophic fires, the massive floods and snowstorms, that are all hammering the West Coast, driven by climate change. So it's we're very grateful, for opportunities like this to share about the technology on All Things Wildfire, and to the XPRIZE Foundation for building awareness and support. These things always require some incubation time, and we've been very privileged to be leading that incubation of this concept of autonomous aircraft for wildfire response. The next evolution of initial attack, and so we're very happy with the progress. We're very happy with the consensus that is emerging around this. We certainly feel like we are no longer the only ones articulating this future, and that's very, very encouraging. And it's exciting. We're very grateful to be able to bring the world's best technology to wildfire response.
I love it, and I think. Well said when you say you're excited that you're not the only one, and more people are talking about wildfire and what needs to be done and bringing it to the forefront. And I think the insurance companies have done their part in kind of exciting, at least Californians, on what's happening with insurance and with wildfire, and actually. Throughout the nation, because even Florida, with all these weather events that are taking place, are really causing the insurance companies to take note and say, "Hey, guys, we need to reevaluate how we charge." So, even though that is, it impacts people in a negative way with premium increases, I think all news and information to highlight the awareness of wildfire is going to serve us all for protection. Absolutely. Now, Max, really quick, let's talk, my friend, about what got you involved? I read a story about you and your father, and I want to allow you to share because I thought that was pretty intriguing.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sophie. Well, my motivation for standing here today and building this company began when I was growing up in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, when a lightning strike struck a tree in the middle of the night that someone reported, but nobody was able to get to until several hours after sunrise, by which time the winds had picked up and it was too late. 3 days later, the army was called in. Ultimately, over 30,000 people were evacuated, over 300 homes destroyed. And it's just not something that you forget as a kid. I remember very distinctly standing on the roof of our home with its cedar roof, with my dad, nailing a soaker hose, across the top, hoping that, this trickle of water that we'd leave on, as the police were standing at the bottom of our driveway ordering us to leave, it would keep our home safe. And all of this where, you could stick your hand out in front of you and barely see the edge of your fingers. The smoke was so thick and, chunks of ash, raining down. It is one of those things you just do not forget. And so, it's kind of like as a kid, you're like, well, why couldn't we just stop it when it was small? Everyone heard that the lightning strike, struck a tree in, the Okanagan Mountain Park. Okay, well, what would it take to get it and contain the fire when it was small? Why did we have to let it get so big? And so, why, right?
Yeah.
And that's just stuck with me. And I've been waiting since then for the right time to build the technology to be able to support containing ignitions before they grow out of control. And so we started the company in 2019 because we saw all of the incredible work that was being done with wildfire early detection cameras being deployed broadly across the state of California. Now there's over 1,100 in California and closer to 2,000 across the American West, with more in Canada and around the world. And so early detection, was there, in the latter part of the last decade. And the incredible advances in wildfire simulation and propagation modeling, which allows informing, okay, where should autonomous aircraft be pre-positioned? And then topping it all off is that we saw that these advanced autonomous aircraft were already being fielded in a military context, and that they could be adapted to the wildfire problem or to help address the growing wildfire crisis. So that's my motivation. That's why I'm here, and just excited to be able to advance the industry, and bring the whole state of the industry a little bit forward.
What a great story, Max, to be able to. It just ties right into your purpose now. I'm not sure what you were doing before you started this, but I can tell you that these types of experiences that we have, and you're right, as a child, there's a lot of things that we experience that we will never be able to forget. And to have something like that drive you to pursue, an answer, not only an answer, Max, but future. Because to me, going back to your point about, a lot of the attention goes to what's happening now and the urgency of what's taking place now with a wildfire. And so it sometimes blinds us from being able to see the future because we're still stuck in here right now. But you're building something that is not only going to work for now, but it's also going to be working for 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future. To me, that is absolutely powerful and really dynamic from the standpoint of being able to understand that we've got to slow things down with regards to whoever's making these types of decisions, to really have more of consideration to stop and think and plan and ponder and get all the smarter people around us or around them to help make some of these amazing decisions and then test things out like you guys did recently. So That's very, very exciting. Love the story.
Yeah. And I just add there that, there is a pathway, right, for fire agencies to begin getting their feet wet with autonomy in a very phased approach.
Awesome.
And I think this is one of the big things that folks don't understand. When they see the future, when they hear us talking about this future of pre-positioned autonomous aircraft being able to rapidly contain emissions, is that there's several steps leading up to that actually have very near-term benefits to fire agencies. Autonomy is not just for uncrewed aircraft. Autonomy can help improve the safety of existing human-piloted operations. Right? There's so many advanced features that these autonomy systems are able to bring to human-piloted missions. Sensing and avoiding obstacles of terrain, being able to operate degraded visual environments, and through smoke and at night, that really help today's operations while enabling building trust and confidence in the same autonomous technology that will enable these aircraft to operate fully uncrewed and be pre-positioned at scale, through high-risk areas. So
now, Max, let's. I like what you said. Let's talk about. Okay, because we have quite a bit of fire officials and executives and firefighters, fire captains, fire marshals that listen to this podcast. But take us through a preliminary step, because as I hear you talking about this, if I'm a fire captain or someone that's able to have some sort of influence, I'm thinking, okay, this is good, but holy smokes, how am I going to test one of these things or to slowly, step by step, go into what this could look like? And so you kind of mentioned that there are some preliminary steps that can be taken. What would that look like for being able to have facilities? Because I imagine, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I imagine that one of the visions is to have these autonomous aircrafts at fire stations. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
On the fire station of the future, and we expect that there will be many, many more fire stations that are distributed principally according to wildfire risk, that can serve as bases that for these aircraft that can be dynamically repositioned according to real-time risk. But yes,
got it. The fire station of the future. I like that. You know what's interesting is we did a little research and found that in the city of Malibu, there's a fire station, and it has two fire trucks there. And at the time of the Malibu fires here a few years ago, 25 homes within 2 blocks of them had burnt to the ground. And what's scary about that is that as homeowners, if the fire station is near to our home, we feel to some degree a lot better knowing that, fire trucks are 2 blocks away. But the scary thing is the reality of what's taking place. These wildfires, they don't know any boundaries. The embers are casting miles in advance and really leaving resources up to just making quick decisions as quickly as possible to figure out where they're going to go. And when I think about this autonomous aircraft and the intelligence that it will have, I think we will all sleep better at night, knowing that not only can it travel at night, but it can do the work. And sometimes I would imagine it would extinguish fires before they become anything significant and save property and lives. So Max, I'm excited. I'm excited about having this conversation and thinking about the future. Let me ask, you guys raised looks like $9.7 million in seed financing this last year in 2023. And let's talk about what does that do for your organization? Well, what's next? What are you guys planning for 2024? What's on the horizon for 2025? Can you share a little bit about that future?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So, we're we're very grateful to have such an incredible group of investors backing us in our seed financing, including DBL Partners, one of the earliest investors, Tesla and SpaceX and Solar City, real leaders in climate policy and taking big bets on emerging technologies. Before the electric vehicle was really obvious, they were in. And so DBL Partners, we're very grateful to have innovative leaders like John and Patrick Collison, the co-founders of Stripe, as early investors in the company who are very supportive and saw the potential for autonomous aircraft to be containing ignitions before they go out of control. We have a group of investors that have personally experienced catastrophic wildfires, including Steve Blank, one of the godfathers of Silicon Valley, professor at Stanford, who stayed up all night, through the 2020 CZ complex fires, protecting his ranch. I remember being on a video call with him, as the flames were coming down over the mountains behind the ranch. He said he had to go. And so we've got a very dedicated group of investors supporting the company, including folks like Capeport Capital, one of the original impact investing groups just across the street here over at Oakland, and Volo Earth, which is a fantastic climate-focused fund. So, I think what's really important to note is that there's a consensus, a growing consensus, or an emerging group of investors that recognize fire technology as an emerging space that has incredible potential to bring the very best technology to address the growing catastrophic wildfire crisis. And we're very glad to be able to raise a rather large seed round as just one more signal and indicator in this market for the potential of this technology to truly help our firefighters and the communities that they serve. So what does this unlock or enable us to do? Of course, it enables us to grow our team. We're hiring for a few roles in engineering to support our wildfire mission autonomy system. We've got some exciting projects coming up in the next year. We'll have pilot projects demonstrating more of what we just showed with Sikorsky of early detection and autonomous rapid response. Nice. And for us, it's all about that go-to-market and taking the next steps to get the technology deployed.
Love it. I do want to be invited to the next testing. I think a lot of us would like to be invited to go see this actually in action. So that's exciting. Now, Max, let me ask you. We got a few more minutes here. With this technology in this aircraft, what's the concern with wind? Because I know, helicopters are grounded now when they reach a certain amount of wind and they're like, hey, you're grounded, it's unsafe. And so have you guys figured anything out there?
Yeah. I mean, I think as you've been tracking the company for a few years and you've seen us progress towards larger and larger platforms. And a key driver of that is the very stark reality that wind is an outsized factor in driving wildfire growth. And so requires substantial payload and also the ability to navigate safely in high wind conditions. And so our work integrating our software with Blackhawk, that wind is certainly a principal motivator for that. If you ever have a few minutes, I encourage you and our listeners here today to go take a look at the types of wind conditions that very skilled Coast Guard pilots fly, in storm-like conditions. And so, from first principles, from physics, the aircraft is able to fly in very adverse conditions. And with the support of technology and autonomy, we can help expand the envelope where aerial firefighting aircraft are able to fly, or the wind conditions that they're able to fly in, to support responding to ignitions. Obviously, there's significant challenges in getting suppressant from the air to the ground on target, and you've begun to investigate and do research and development in various ways of ensuring that even though the aircraft is flying at high wind conditions, that we can also get the suppressant to where it needs to be on the ground.
Yeah, and I think with AI, you guys will be able to figure this out. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I know it's going to be a challenge to get it figured out, but once you do, that's going to be so good. One of the things that we talk about, some of the wildfires, firefighters, have told us stories where they're at the end of the hose and they're shooting off X miles per minute as far as the water, and they're shooting straight ahead. Yet the wind is so strong that it's going to the left or going to the right. So those are some real challenges, but so exciting to understand also that can be figured out. Right, with enough technology, you can drop here and it's going to water over there. And knowing that is going to be like a game changer, because now you could attack the fire in a bunch of different ways more intelligently than ever before. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so true. And I would encourage anybody listening, to go, if you have a few minutes, take a look on YouTube. Just watch, the SpaceX Falcon 9 landings. Yeah, this is what humanity has achieved and has achieved, even back in 2015. Absolutely incredible. Landing a pencil, back on the ground from space. It's incredible. And so, I often take a moment and just go watch those. We're very fortunate to also have, early investors in SpaceX as investors in the company, and we've learned a lot from them. But it's just a reminder of what we can accomplish together, and I truly do mean together, because Silicon Valley can't just go out and build in a vacuum. That's how we get all sorts of tech that nobody actually wants. But incredible things can happen when Silicon Valley works together with firefighters, with fire agencies, works together with policy leaders, works together with government. And we've seen this happen in so many different places. SpaceX is a testament to that, and what we're able to achieve collectively in the past few years. And I'm so excited to be helping bring advanced technology to perhaps no better cause than to address the growing catastrophic wildfire crisis.
Man, I love that. I love the idea that SpaceX is an investor, and back to your point about how the Falcon landings can really be pinpointed. And when you talk about that and we see it, it becomes more of a reality of, okay, if that can be done, a lot more can be done. And it goes back to what you're working on. So I think that's very, very exciting for all of us to see and hear. Before we close, Max, is there anything that you want to leave with the listeners, including potential investments into your firm? Because look, I think cash flow is the lifeblood of any company, and I think there are people listening now, including myself, that would love to be a part of what you're doing to continue to push this innovation forward, to see how soon you can make this a reality for all of us.
Well, thanks, Sophie, and thanks to everyone listening for a fantastic conversation. I look forward to hearing from you. We're pretty active on LinkedIn and Twitter. For anyone who's interested in investing in the company, we've got an email address, invest@rain.aero. You can certainly send us a note, and we'll keep you updated. I would just say that we're really in a very special moment right now. And that special moment is there's an entire community of technologists, engineers, coming out of Silicon Valley and around the world, who are so psyched and so looking forward to help bring the world's most advanced technology, to solve a very critical real problem here, on Earth. We're just like you and just like everyone who's in service at a fire agency, that we live and breathe this stuff. We're up, all day and much of the night. We're working around the clock, to help make this reality. And there's, like you said earlier, OP, there's nothing like doing this in collaboration with others. And yes, and it's certainly our intent and our desire to build this in collaboration with the community. And look forward to engaging wherever we have the opportunity. We'll be at Aerial Firefighting North America next week, and we're usually at all of the usual suspects when it comes to conferences. So if you see us, we'll probably be wearing a rain jacket like I am right now.
Rain gear, yep.
Please stop us and say hi. We'd love to connect.
That's awesome. And I think understanding that you are on a mission to make this happen, along with your colleagues and everyone else who's working diligently on this. I just want to say, I know that there are times when awareness from others impacts you, and you're like, yes, people are getting it. We're getting great feedback. And then there are times where in this process where all you hear is crickets. Right? There's no one saying, great job, go do it. We're behind you. But you have to continue plowing. You have to continue working because you're onto something. And even when the crowds are not cheering on, you as an entrepreneur, we as entrepreneurs and business owners have to continue to understand that we are on a mission. And whether people are singing our praises right now or not, we know that we have something special and that we're going to bring it to market and it's going to be powerful. And so I think, hats off to you and your people as entrepreneurs, really understanding that it's not every day that you're going to be celebrated, but you got to keep your head down and keep working because you guys are onto something pretty massive. So thank you, Max, for your time and your commitment to this process.
Thank you. I'm so glad we got a chance to speak today, and I look forward to catching you live in person at wherever next crosspaths.
Looking forward to it, brother. Thank you so much.
Okay. See ya.
That's all for this episode of All Things Wildfire. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to our show and follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things wildfire. And as always, thanks for listening.